At 52, I lost a job that I'd been in for 10 years. Just 7 days earlier, I'd bought this house here in Spain. No income, real commitments, and one decision to make that I knew I couldn't undo. This is what happened next. If you're watching this and starting to feel that time matters more than money, then stay with me, because this isn't a video about quitting work. It's about what happens when you realise that you're not actually in control of your future, and you have to decide whether to accept that or do something about it. Now, I need to explain first about how I've always seen employment. I've never felt secure in employment. From my early 20s right up to my early 40s, I worked for myself. I built a business in the UK, I employed many staff, and I carried the responsibility for everything. If things went wrong, it was on me, but I was in control. After that business, I continued to earn my own income in different ways in different countries. So when I took this last job and stayed 10 years, it was actually the first time in decades where I felt my future wasn't fully in my hands, and that never sat comfortably with me, because no matter how stable things looked, I always knew one decision, one restructure, one spreadsheet could end it, and eventually it did. So as I mentioned, I was made redundant, and during that redundancy, there was no drama, there was no anger. For me, it was just a moment that changed things. Now, the business did offer me another role, but that role meant more hours for less money, which for me just seemed a big step backwards. But here's the thing, I had a decision to make, and I didn't have months to think about it. It was either take the new role or take the redundancy money. And the stakes were relatively high, I guess, because just before all of this happening, just a week before, I'd bought this house here in Spain. And I already own another property in Spain. So that meant 2 lots of mortgages, 2 sets of bills, responsibilities on top of responsibilities. So with no income, decisions had to be made immediately. And that's the moment where I think a lot of people freeze. Now, at this point, I guess it would have been easy just to go back to work, to choose the safe, predictable option. I could have updated my CV, looked for the next role, and kept earning. But I knew something would be lost. My time, my freedom, and my chance to take control again, particularly at the age of 52. And I'm not going to lie, I wrestled with it backwards and forwards in my mind, because the safe choice doesn't feel brave, it feels comfortable. And comfort, I kept coming back to in my own mind, is that silent trap that keeps so many people stuck. Before I was able to make a decision, I spent hours and hours just sitting and thinking, calculating and weighing up every possible outcome. How long would my finances last? How will we manage 2 lots of mortgages and all the associated costs that come with 2 homes? Would I be able to financially manage this renovation if something went terribly wrong? Then I started to think back to all the times I'd taken risks before, setting up businesses from scratch, moving to new countries, learning things the hard way, and doing that reminded me with a big smile on my face about how exciting those times were compared to employment. Also as well, I asked myself one simple question, and that was, what's the worst that could happen, and would I be able to handle it? And the answer was simply yes. I also pictured every scenario in real time in my head, staying in the job and feeling trapped, taking that new role that I mentioned and losing my freedom all over again, or walking away and facing the exciting unknown. I also sat and thought about all the small things too, the Spanish bureaucracy, if I was to try setting up a business here in Spain, contractors maybe not showing up with regards to renovating on this house, bills piling up and unexpected delays and challenges. But all those things I felt started to feel very exciting once again. And I think in that quiet, I realised something, and that Yes, there was a little bit of fear, but it certainly wasn't as strong as the regret I'd feel if I just stayed comfortable and never tried. And I think it's in those moments where clarity hits, when you see what matters most and the decision becomes less about a safety net and more about living on your own terms. So after wrestling with the options that I had, it then hit me that if I go back, will this moment come again? The chance to take my life and my time back into my own hands, or if I kept working for this employer, am I just going to do the typical thing and just keep sitting at a desk, crunching numbers all day until I retire? So I chose redundancy, and it certainly wasn't the easy choice, because it isn't, and it wasn't because it was a safe choice, because it isn't, but it was simply because I felt it was necessary. So once I'd made the decision to take the redundancy, that's where the other reality hit. Now, Spain isn't an easy country to live in. I've been here for 2 decades, and making money here is so hard compared to the UK. Entrepreneurship here is just something that isn't promoted. The red tape, the bureaucracy, unexpected delays, the costs that are thrown always at you, which you just don't expect. And trying to set up a business here really has a lot of challenges to overcome. Then on top of that, obviously I bought this house and it needed a full renovation. So I was managing contractors. I had the costs of that to deal with, all being my responsibility. And of course, as I no longer had that income, there was no salary to cover mistakes, no fallback. So the risk was very real and the pressure was very constant. But the other option, which was staying in a job that slowly took my time away, just felt so much worse. And I think that's the point that most people never see. Sometimes the real risk is in not acting. Now, if you've got this far in the vlog, here's the lesson that I want you to take away. No job guarantees security, and no employer guarantees control of your life. The only real safety is knowing that you can adapt, that you can make decisions when everything feels uncertain. So if you're watching this and thinking, I could never do that, you most definitely can. Until I realised that the bigger risk was staying comfortable, the bigger risk was not choosing. And that's what this channel is about. It's about building a second chapter in real time, not dreaming, not waiting, just doing. So if you've ever felt stuck, uncertain, or just ready for a change, make sure you hit that subscribe button now. That way you can watch every challenge, every triumph, and all the lessons I learn as I create my own second chapter. And maybe it will motivate you to start yours. Subscription is absolutely free. It doesn't cost a thing, but it could change the way that you see what's possible. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.